Week 1 of trying to finish my Goodreads challenge, successful. We started off with 2 good ones, for different reasons though. First, we're going to start with Strange Gods, which was good because it was a good book. So Strange Gods follows a teenager named Spooky, nickname, who's at a camp for troubled teens. And she runs into a god who kidnaps her and is like, tell me stories or I kill you, and finds another teenager to tell me stories. So this was actually kind of interesting. This god is like a mid-level god. There's like 3 different kinds of gods, like low level, mid, and high, and it kind of correlates to the kind of things they can create. The high level gods can create like Earth, where we have like free will and we could like spontaneously make up things. Whereas this mid-level god, he can only create things that like run on like a predetermined path, kind of. So because of that, we on Earth are capable of creating new stories, whereas his creations cannot. Which is why he wants all the stories. Like, he kidnaps her and he's like, tell me all the stories from the past 8,000 years. This is where I would have died, because I wouldn't have been able to come up with these stories. I would have been done. That would have been it. I wouldn't have been out there in the first place making out with a guy behind the dumpster, but I still would have died. So obviously she can't tell stories forever. So she's like, hey, you know what? In the past 8,000 years, we have developed the internet and you can get your own stories. And then the story kind of devolves into like shenanigans, and then we find out the Earth is about to get destroyed, and they go off on like the magical quest kind of thing. And it's a wild ride. And I think Alison Kimball, that's her name? Yeah. Alison Kimball, she did a really good job of like making them non-human, if that makes sense. Like they definitely seem like they're operating on a different level properly, not just like saying that they are. You actually see that they are. When I was reading this book and she was walking through this god's house with like the chickens and gross stuff, I was kind of like, this is giving me Spirited Away vibes, you know, like Yubaba's bathhouse up in here. And it's kind of hard to explain because I feel like it's not really, like it's more sinister. It's definitely more sinister, but it was still kind of giving me that vibe, you know, that kind of like otherworldly, you're trapped here kind of thing. Now, I gave it 4 stars because it took me a little bit to get into. If I was not pressed to read 2 books, I probably would have put this to the side for like a month and I read another book. Yeah, it wasn't until like chapter 7 that I was totally into the book. Like, don't take that as the book sucking. Like, that could just be my brain refusing to latch onto a new story. But yeah, I wasn't really into it until chapter 7, like after she had gotten the internet. So one thing that this book touched upon that I feel like is not touched upon a lot is how incredibly shitty the troubled teen industry is. It's only been like recent years that people have been talking about it a little bit. Most recently was with Paris Hilton and her expose or whatever. But there was also Bad Baby, who was on Dr. Phil and then got sent off to a troubled teen, you know, whatever. And what am I thinking, like 2008, 2012, where there was that movie Jesus Camp. Now 2006, it focused on a religious troubled teen camp. Anyway, it feels like these kind of places get kind of swept under the rug because no one really cares. You know, they see delinquent teens and society as a whole doesn't really care about them. A lot of these places are in other countries, so like the law is already working against you because it's another country. They're in these places for stupid reasons, as are these characters in here. Like the main characters, the most ridiculous reasons ever that they've been shipped off to this camp. I'm not going to tell you what they are because it is like part of the mystery of reading the book, but it's absolutely ridiculous. I have heard specific stories. The one girl, a very common reason to be sent off to this camp. The main character and the guy, not so much. But the girl, definitely, a lot of girls just like her get sent off. to these camps. And I guess it's kind of refreshing in a way to include that in a story. Like, I feel like the person who would pick up this book wouldn't necessarily be someone who was looking for troubled teen industry information, you know? So it's kind of nice that it's been included in a piece of media. Also, another thing that this book touches upon, to a much more minor degree, is the absent God theory. I don't think that's what it's called, but the theory that God exists. He created the world, but then he was like, okay, bye-bye, peace, and ditched. I feel like that's kind of like a niche interest talking point, but I don't think I've ever seen it so specifically addressed in like a fiction entertainment novel or like a movie. I see it a lot in like religious debates, but never in like a piece of media like this. So that was kind of interesting. Anyway, final thoughts. I'm trying to keep spoilers out of this. How do I do this? I'm really trying. I'm trying to keep spoilers out. Final thoughts. This is a good book. Honestly, I was originally kind of turned off because her name was Spooky, and I was like, this is setting a tone I'm not sure I like. It works. It does work once you read it. So yes, big recommendation. Strange Gods. This was good. Probably would not have read this if I wasn't in QWERTY's Discord, because I wouldn't have even known about it. This is very definitely not a well-known book. This was the second book I read, Darkhouse. I gave it 5 stars. Before you jump to any conclusions about that 5-star, just know it's not 5-star because it's a good book. It's 5-star because it was so entertaining. It's not 5-star writing, but it's a 5-star entertainment read. This is a book from 2011, and it reads like a book from 2011. Some older books, they don't. This one has definitely aged. Definitely aged. Even the author, looking back on this, is like, oh god, this is so embarrassing. From black pants with cargo boots to star ratings on YouTube, this is a book from 2011. Does anyone remember star ratings? YouTube used to have star ratings. So did Netflix, by the way. Netflix used to have star ratings. And then Amy Schumer put out a comedy special so incredibly bad that Netflix decided to be like, okay, let's take away nuance from this, good or bad. Thanks, Amy. So anyway, Darkhouse. This book. The description of this book kind of has it seem like she already knew that she could see ghosts, and like she was like established as a ghost seer, and someone contacted her. That is not how this goes down. She goes to her uncle's house, and her uncle has this lighthouse on the property that's been abandoned since who knows freaking when. And she and her sister and like her cousins and her cousins' friends go out and get drunk, and she's like, okay, these kids, because she's like 22 and they're like 19, oh these kids can stay over here. I'm gonna go explore this lighthouse. And in the lighthouse, she meets a trespasser who is filming the Ghost web series. And then while she's like, oh, who is this creepoid in this lighthouse, who is actually kind of hot, creepy stuff starts happening, blah blah blah. So here's the deal, okay? This is a first book of an author, so I'm not too harsh on it. Definitely it's got a whole bunch of those ye old tropes. The pop references are off the charts. The main character in this book, I am pretty much her age. I think I'm like maybe like 2 or 3 years at most older than her, and I had no idea what she was talking about sometimes. I was like, who was that? If you don't know who an actor is, there are several characters in this book you have no idea what they look like. I'm serious. Not that I'm good at picturing faces, so it wasn't like a huge problem for me, but I know some people would be very bothered by that. The main love interest's mustache was described as like Erin Phil. I don't even know what the name was. Erin something. Some Errol. I'm like, who the hell is that? What kind of mustache is that? I'm not looking that up. So yeah, that could be a big turnoff for you if you read this. It was very amusing to me. The This is a horror book. I was laughing a lot. This was so funny. It was like so bad it was good, kind of. That's why I gave it a 5 stars. I gave it 5 stars purely on entertainment value. I will not be reading the second book because I can kind of see where this is going, and I know that the next books will piss me off. I could feel it in my bones, and I will explain why. It's mostly because of the love interest, okay? First of all, big red flag out front. He's 32. He's got a girlfriend, and he lives in a totally different city. And it's kind of a douche. So I like it where this book is, because this book is, she's 22 and she likes him. He doesn't give a crap about her. There's like a little bit of like, maybe he thinks she's a little cute, but he's got a girlfriend and a whole other life in a whole other city. He's not thinking anything about her, all right? And I like how that ended in this book, because it ends just like that. And I know, because this is a slow burn over 11 books, that they will eventually get together, which means that he is gonna ditch his girlfriend, who they already set up as a massive bitch, which I'm not a fan of that. I'm not a fan of like, hey, his girlfriend sucks, so it's okay if we steal him away from his girlfriend. No, I don't like that. But yeah, this was pre-Gamergate. The love interest was like, there's this one part where he's shut up you. He's taking antipsychotics, and he said that it makes him gain weight, so he's only taking like partial dose, which okay. But he also has not told his girlfriend that he's taking a partial dose, or a dose at all. And his girlfriend is complaining that he's getting fat, so she made him go to the gym. He tells the main character, like, I don't like going to the gym. Going to the gym is the gayest thing in the world. And I would just like, yeah, that was 2011. That was definitely 2011. I liked him in this book, even though he's a gigantic douche, because most of his character in this book is him getting massively annoyed by our main character. Like, his life is being made miserable by the main character, which is what makes this a good read. I don't think I could tolerate him getting what he wants. How about that? Now, on to the main character, alright? She's definitely a 2011, not like other girls kind of girl. You know, the one who's like, oh, I'm rough and edgy. I wear ripped sweaters. I wanted to be a stunt woman. I drive a motorcycle. And all other girls suck. Like, really? There's only one woman in this entire book that she's good to? Like, really good to? And that woman is her boss, who is like the best boss in the world because she's letting her take off so much work, and gave her promotion, and let her take off her last couple of days on the lower level, and is doing, I was like, oh god. No one would be treated like this. You would be fired. Everyone else, even her sister and her mother, all treated bleh. There's this one waitress, like, out in wherever they are, that she's like, for no reason, is like, I didn't even want to look at her because I didn't want to gag. And I was like, excuse me? Let me see if I could find that. I'm pretty sure I highlighted that. I am so sure that I did. Let me just look up Nancy. I remember her name. It was so shocking to me that I remember the woman's name. Here we go. It's because she's fat, probably. A rotund waitress came by. She had thick glasses, a bulbous red nose, and seemed to lack a chin. I couldn't look at her face too long without feeling nauseous, so I looked at her name tag. And I was like, what the actual F? Are you serious right now? And then later, Nancy is mean, but I'm like, she has reason to be. What the hell is happening right here? There's also a lot of fat phobia, but like built into the story. Well, let's be real. The author is probably a little, but the character herself has like internalized a lot of stuff because she used to be fat, and her mother sucks. It was making comments, like she's even making comments in this book about like, oh, you used to be fat, blah blah blah, and it's a sore point for the main character. It's in here. It's in here. Let's just leave it at that. It's in here. That could totally turn you off. It's everywhere in here. It's constantly on her mind. It's kind of like one of the reasons she uses to rationalize that this guy will never like her. So it's really in the book a lot. Just be aware of that. What else is in here? Definitely very cavalier with the mental health and self-harm. There was a moment where it was hinted that the main love interest was schizophrenic. I'm not sure I liked how that was handled. Even though it would be interesting to like explore like how a schizophrenic person would deal with seeing ghosts, like real ghosts. That would be freaking horrific, wouldn't it? But this was definitely not the author to be diving into that. So I'm kind of happy that he doesn't actually have schizophrenia. Yeah, I could go on forever with the problems in this book. It was a train wreck, but it was like a really good train wreck, you know? It was definitely like a slow down and watch and like tell your whole family about it. That's why I give it 5. Because it did what it was meant to do. It made my night. I stayed up until like 6 o'clock reading this thing. It was supposed to be scary. There was one part where I was actually scared, but it was more because I got a thought in my head, like, what if I'm laying here in the dark, and I was like, what if a face just suddenly came right here and was illuminated in the light of this book? Like, what would happen? And that's what freaked me out. It had nothing to do with what was in the story. Here's a fun last factoid. All right. So the love interest, come on, Kalani, lives in Seattle. And when the main character asks where in Seattle he lives, he says Queen Anne. Now, if you're a weirdo like me, you know that Queen Anne is where Grey's Anatomy, like the Grey's Anatomy house is, where Meredith Grey lives. And as soon as he said Queen Anne, I was like, this chick, I think she watches Grey's Anatomy. I mean, she could have, chosen Queen Anne organically because it's a nice neighborhood. But I was like, I think she watches Grey's Anatomy. Later in the book, what's-her-face gets a head injury, and she's like, I might as well say that I'm going to Seattle Grace to get healed by Dr. McDreamy. And I was like, she's a Grey's Anatomy fan. Because here's the deal, right? A regular person could know about McDreamy and Seattle Grace Hospital without ever having watched the show. But you would have to watch the show to know that McDreamy deals with head injuries. I called it. And that's part of the fun of reading this book. This is a very unique situation where I've given 5 stars to a book, but I do not recommend anyone read it. What do you want me to say? I had a blast. It will probably upset most people. Now, being charitable, the author also recognizes that this book sucks. Even though I loved it. She does recognize this book sucks. So, I'm sure later books are much better. I'm just not going to read them. Alright, here we go. Get rid of Strange Gods. And then Darkhouse, going away. 6 remain. What am I reading this time? Okay, so we got, okay, I just accidentally erased some of Sorcery of Thorns, so I'm going to read that one next. So Sorcery of Thorns is fantasy. So let's pair it with the other fantasy. I'm going to read Sorcery of Thorns and Reaper at the Gates. That's going to be my 2 next books for next week. I think those are both long books. Let me see. Okay, yeah, they're definitely not short. One is 456 pages, the other one is 458. So, yeah, I definitely got longer books to read this week. Wish me luck. I'll see you next week. Peace.